Stephen Johnson covers TCU. The Frogs lost that opening game to Colorado. Then they have taken care of business against teams that you would think they should, against especially Nichols and then Houston. And then SMU, you don't know. You kind of wondered about that, but TCU was very strong, winning 34-17. Stephen, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul. And I'm David Smoak. Do they have at least what you think is a little bit of that mojo back?
Yeah, I think so, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, if you go back to the last 3 weeks, keep in mind the competition, but they've only given up 2 offensive touchdowns over the last 3 games, and one of those came late in the fourth quarter when the game was pretty much already decided. Now you're starting to see the defense play like a defense that has 7 or 8 starters back from last year. And the offense isn't perfect yet, but, they're still averaging close to 40 points per game, and they don't even feel like they've hit their stride yet. So it seems like this team is starting to play its best football at the right time, and it's kind of put that Colorado game behind them.
How much was that Colorado game on? They didn't have any film on anything, really, and they got caught up. They were the victims of a moment.
I'm sure it was a big part of it. And you talk to Sonny at times afterwards, and, he acknowledges that, in the offseason, instead of watching one team, they're watching 20, 25, 30. However many teams, however many games they had to watch. And, I think that was a challenge. But more or less, TCU would tell you they just didn't play well that day. They got to the red zone. They had 2 interceptions thrown into the red zone. Griffin Kell, normally one of the best kickers in the Big 12, misses a field goal. And then, like we're talking about their experienced defense, over 20 missed tackles. Just, as good as Shadur played that game, over half of his yards came, after the catch, which goes to show you how explosive those receivers are and how bad of a job TCU did tackling. So they definitely were a victim of the moment, but honestly, I think they're kind of kicking themselves more than, thinking it was anything that necessarily Colorado did that day, excuse me.
Stephen, was there any extra gasoline poured on the fire of this rivalry because of the fact that, it's been announced they're not going to play this after 2025, the fact that SMU is going to the ACC? Was there anything all that different from your experience? I know you haven't been covering, the Iron Skillet for years and years at this point, but what was the festivities like?
I thought it was a little bit more intense last year, and, maybe, SMU fans are a little bit more vocal on social media now, but I thought last year, when the game was over in University Park or whatever, the festivities, I think that was the biggest crowd in their history. I could feel that intensity last year. This year, we're in the press box, and for a while it looked like it was going to be a kind of a sparse crowd, and there weren't a lot of SMU fans there either. So, like I said, there was a lot of talking on Twitter, but I didn't really see that translate to a big SMU presence or to really intensify the game at all this year.
When you look at Chandler Morris and what he's doing, is this kind of him showing a little bit about what he was going to be last year?
I think so. And obviously for him, before he got hurt, this would have been his 4th or 5th start going back last year. So now he's kind of getting some of that experience that he's supposed to get last year. And he has his up and down. We've seen him kind of struggle with turnovers, but it seems like he's getting better and better each week. You're seeing what he can do as a dual threat. He's not the physical runner like Max was, but I think he's a little bit more agile. He's more willing to kind of tuck the ball down quicker and scramble with it. We've been seeing some of the touch. And like I said, he's getting really close. The entire offense, actually, they're going from really good to great. So I think Chandler's kind of showing why he won the quarterback job last year, but there's still room for growth.
What do you think is the thing that's keeping the offense from hitting on all cylinders, even though they've done well?
I just think it's execution, man. They're not great in the red zone just yet. Some of that, I don't know if it's play calling. There was one time they get down to the red zone. The first play call they called was a jet sweep to Savion Williams, who great athlete, but it's not necessarily a guy you think will probably be featured on the jet sweep. So, boom, you lose 2 or 3 yards, and now you're behind the chains, and, you got to settle for a field goal. So they've been settling for a lot of field goals when they get to the red zone. Before the last game, obviously, turnovers were an issue. I think they had a red zone turnover in 3 straight games before, obviously, this past Saturday. So I think right now it's just execution. from both the coaching's play calling perspective and also the players, man. There are still a couple times with Chandler, especially when he's trying to throw those seam routes kind of over the middle of the field. He just needs to take a little off of it. I think there were maybe one or two passes on Saturday where if he just uses a little bit more placement over power, we're probably talking about 2 more touchdowns as opposed to that game being kind of close in the fourth quarter. So I just think execution, and it should be expected. You got a bunch of new starters, bunch of new pieces. So I think execution and chemistry is still an ongoing process, but they've still been looking good regardless of that.
Speaking of that chemistry, Stephen, how have you seen some of those guys start to sort of emerge and separate and find themselves, especially in that wide receiving core? Has there been anything noticeable development-wise recently, like a Jalen Robertson or a J.P. Richardson, guys starting to establish themselves a bit more these last couple games?
Well, it looks like Jalen Robinson will be the kind of the starter at the outside receiver spot along with Savion Williams. I think they were kind of deciding it's going to be Warren Thompson, it's going to be Dalen Wright. But he started the last 2 games at that spot, and he had a really strong first half against SMU as well, too. I think just his explosiveness, we know how fast he is. I think the staff wanted the guy in the lineup that was kind of similar to Darius Davis. He kind of had that ability to kind of take the top off the defense. Mm-hmm. So it looks like he's beginning to separate himself. John Paul Richardson, I think, is still kind of having the best year, but he's not all the way healthy. Sonny hasn't really elaborated on what exactly he's dealing with, but I think he's been the most productive receiver despite kind of dealing with some nicks and knacks that have kind of kept him from being 100%.
Last thing, Steve. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was finished. Go ahead.
TCU now at home against West Virginia. West Virginia's defense has carried them the early part of the year, and they had the nice win against Texas Tech. I don't know if they have been tested by another offense that can put up some points because Tech doesn't seem to be that right now. But your thoughts about what you've seen from West Virginia, because they were a team they finished last in the Big 12, and right now they're 3-1.
Oh, well, they definitely have performed above their preseason expectations, and I'm sorry to the fans in Waco with the way Baylor's been looking. I think we have a new team that's kind of occupying their last 5 plays. Yep. But definitely the defense they're one of the best third down defenses in the country. So no, teams are having a hard time sustaining drives against them. Like I said, it's been impressive to see what they've been doing on that side of the ball. They had Pittsburgh to 6 points, Texas Tech to 13. I know their quarterback got hurt. But still, anytime you're going to hold a Power 5 team under 20 points, it's a great day by your defense. But Penn State kind of had his way with them, and I know the Nittany Lions was really good, man. So the defense didn't really have much of an answer for them. So I think it's kind of a situation, are they as good as they've looked the last 2 weeks? Maybe not. Were they as bad as they were in their first game against Penn State? Probably not. So I think they're somewhere in the middle where they're an above average defense that has some strength, especially on third down. But if I'm still TCU, I'm going into this game with the expectation that we should be able to at least get around 30 points on this defense. And with the quarterback situation in West Virginia, I think if they can get 28 or above, they should kind of come out of Saturday with another win.
And, Steven, final thing on this, a little extra ammo or oomph for this game. Is it a blackout, correct, this Saturday night at the Carter?
Yes, it is. It's a blackout, 7 p.m., primetime game. So TCU has had some great attendance so far this week. So I'm expecting another great crowd on Saturday.
Thank you for the time, Stephen. As always, Stephen Johnson covers TCU for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Before we hit the top,